Chapter 19. Once the storm clears up, it gets hotter than ever. The air is still and quiet. There ain't no breeze blowing. There ain't no birds singing. My guess is there ain't no birds left, and if there is, there ain't nowhere for them to sit. When we stand on the porch and look out, Aunt Joyce's yard looks like an ocean of pine branches with broke-off trunks sticking up every once in a while. Daddy asked Aunt Joyce if she's got a saw he can start cutting some of the branches with. He says he wants to cut a path to the garden. He wants to make his way to her car. She finds a half-rusted saw and an old axe in a closet by her washing machine. She says they ain't been used in 1,000 years, and they look it. Daddy picks them up, heads outside, and starts chopping. Every morning, Daddy and Grandpa T sit in Aunt Joyce's car and listen to the radio. When I ask Daddy what he's listening to, he just looks at me and tells me to go pick up some shingles. I'm making a pile of shingles beside Daddy's pile of branches. I can't help but notice that they ain't all the same kind of shingles, and there ain't no other house nearby that I can see. We eat steak and chicken from the freezer. We drink hot drinks out of the can. We run out of clean clothes. We pull all the tomatoes still hanging on the vines. Mama says she's losing count of the days, but I ain't. Every night when I lay down on my pallet, I say to myself, that's another one. I lay there and I'm wondering where in the bathroom does Buddy lay himself down. That tile is cold and hard, and we didn't put his blanket in there with him. I'm wondering if he can eat all he needs out of that hole in the bag. I'm wondering what if the stopper don't work in the tub and all the water drains out. Sometimes I think about the window and the pecan tree, and I squinch up my eyes and I think as hard as I can to Buddy. When I get home, I'm thinking to him, I'm going to make it up to you, I promise. I tell him I'll sell my bicycle back to the lady and it'll be dog biscuits every day. I tell him I'll make him that leg. I know Grandpa T will help me. We'll walk to the river. It won't be long, Buddy. I'm thinking to him. It won't be long. But no rescue trucks come. We've been living in that house without electricity for 5 days. On day 6, Mom says we got to get milk. This baby needs milk. Grandpa T nods real slow. And I need my medicine. Are you about out? Daddy says real sharp. Grandpa T pulls a little brown bottle out of his pocket and shakes it. It don't make hardly any noise. Why didn't you say something for? Daddy asks, and then he looks at Aunt Joyce. How far are we from town? 10 miles, she says. Daddy looks down at his shoes. I can walk 10 miles, he says, and heads for the door. We run after him. When will you be back, Daddy? When I get back, he says. We wait all day. We wait all night. We wait all morning. Baby Terrell's crying something bad. Mosquitoes have bitten his arms all to pieces, but we have to keep the windows open 'cause it's too hot. Mama's run out of diapers, and Aunt Joyce is ripping up her sheets. Tanya's sucking on her thumb all day. Mama sits on the front porch and fans herself. Grandpa T sits on the sofa and leans his head back. He hardly moves at all. He's gone, and can't nobody go with him. When it's almost night again, we hear a truck a long way off. We all jump up, and then after a while we see Daddy walking down the long drive with 2 other men. They got great big saws. They pull the cords and fire them up, and then they start cutting their way to the house. We can smell the pine trees again. We're jumping up and down and cheering. When they're done, me and Tanya go running down the road to Daddy, and we jump in his arms. Mama's standing on the porch yelling, "Thank you! Thank you!" Daddy grabs us up. He stinks something bad, but it smells good. He sends us down the road. "Ride with the men," he says. "We'll be right behind you." Mama and Aunt Joyce are already piling stuff in Aunt Joyce's car, and I'm thinking, "Whew, we're going home at last." I'm thinking, when I open that bathroom door, Buddy's probably going to knock me over. He'll be so glad to see me. I'm thinking I'll take him outside, and we'll walk a little in the yard to stretch his legs. And then I'll take him to the shed, and we'll sit in the dark, and I'll tell him about the storm. And he'll listen to every word, every single word. "Get ready, Buddy," I'm thinking. "Here I come." "Are you taking us all the way to New Orleans?" I say to the men. They laugh. "Just to town," they say. All the way in, we're looking at what that storm did. Trees are down everywhere. Electricity lines are laying around like spaghetti. Some houses have their roofs torn off. One house has a swimming pool ripped up and laying against the front porch. Cars are laying around upside down and sideways. One store has its big plate glass window busted and yards of cloth trailing out into the parking lot. "Is it like this in New Orleans?" I say. They look at me. "You ain't heard?" they say. "Heard what?" I say. "New Orleans flooded," they say. "The levees broke. Everything is under water." Tanya sucks in her breath. I sit real quiet. The engine is loud in that truck. "Everything?" I say. "Yes, sirree," one man says. "Right up to the rooftops. Everything. Ain't nothing living in that town no more." The men take us to the shelter in town. It's a big arena where football teams play their games. Out front, there's a long line of people waiting to get in. Some of them are carrying suitcases. Some have garbage bags. Most of them don't have anything at all. The men wait with us until the others get there, then they're gone. Daddy says they're headed out to find other people stuck in their houses in the country. He says they already helped them cut the trees to 2 other houses today. He says at one house the lady was dead, and the man didn't want to leave. "They're too old for this," Daddy says. We had to carry the man out the door. He was crying like a baby the whole way. Aunt Joyce takes one look at that line of people waiting to get in that shelter, and she says there ain't no way she's going to stay in a shelter. She says she's driving up to Atlanta right now to stay with her daughter, even if she has to drive all night. She tells Grandpa T to come on with her, but he says no. She begs him and begs him, but he keeps shaking his head. Finally, she says ain't no fool like an old fool, and drives off, leaving us waiting in line with everybody else. When we get to the front, they give us badges to wear. They write down numbers off Daddy's driver's license. They take us to 6 cots lined up in a row on about the 50-yard line. "How's baby Terrell going to sleep in a cot?" Mama says. Daddy puts his hand on her arm and says, "We're the lucky ones." I'm sitting there on my folding cot. Grandpa T's shaking his head. Mama's opening the milk the ladies gave us. Tanya sucking her thumb. I can't help it. I blurt it right out. "The men in that truck told us the New Orleans is flooded. They said everything is under water. Everything." Mama's busy with the baby. Grandpa T's looking around for the shelter doctor. They don't look at me. But Daddy looks at me. He looks at me a long time. "It's true, son," he finally says. "Everything." He looks at me a little while longer. "I'm sorry," he says. I'm real, real sorry. I lay down on my cot. I curl up. I close my eyes. I go to a place where nobody else can go. Not even Grandpa T. That's the end of chapter 19. Chapter 20. We ain't got nowhere to live now, so we stay in that shelter. There must be about 1,000,000 other people living there with us, all in the same room. Half the people are from Mississippi. They're telling us about a giant wave that washed everything away. Streets, houses, apartment buildings. I can't hardly believe it, but they're telling about it on TV too. The other half of the people are from New Orleans. I lay there on my cot and I think about, what if I see somebody I know? What if my teacher walks down the aisle? Or that boy Rusty? What if I see the lady who cuts Mama's hair, or Mr. Nelson with the truck, or Miss Washington? What if I see J-Boy walking by with his mama following behind him in her nightgown? I think about that and I look at all the faces, but I don't see nobody I know. All those faces, and not a single one of them is somebody I've ever seen before. Every day different workers come in and talk to the people. They're trying to get us clothes and toothbrushes. They're trying to feed us and find us places to live. They're trying to match up families. People make signs and go walking up and down the aisles between the cots. The signs are just lists of names, all the people they can't find. One lady says the names are her children. She says she was visiting her mom in the hospital in Jackson when the storm came. The neighbor was watching her babies. Kevin, you can go ahead and get them. Let's see. The neighbor was watching her babies. She calls and calls, but the phones don't work. Now she don't know where any of them are. She's riding from shelter to shelter carrying her sign. Every day she walks the aisle someplace else. I wonder if anybody's looking for us. I wonder if the news is telling about the storm all the way up in Chicago. I wonder if anybody tried to call us. I wonder what would happen if somebody wrote us a letter. Where would it go? The shelter's getting fuller and fuller. We squeeze the cots closer together. They make rules about who uses the bathroom when. You should have gone with Joyce, Daddy tells Grandpa T. I'll bet she would come back and get you if we call her. What am I going to do sleeping on the sofa in her daughter's apartment in Atlanta? Grandpa T says. Daddy shrugs up his shoulders. And Grandpa T lays back down on his cot. He closes his eyes and goes to sleep. Or wherever. Because to tell the truth, can't nobody really sleep in that shelter with all those people always moving and talking. All day long they're talking loud. All night long they're whispering. They're tossing and turning. They're going to the bathroom. The babies are crying, and when it's just barely light, the loud talking starts up again. Move over. Where are you from? How much water did you get? And one thing everybody's talking about is what it looks like in New Orleans. You can't get away from it. They're saying how the only thing you can see is the roofs of the houses. For miles and miles ain't nothing but black water and roofs. How the helicopters come and take the people off their roofs. How they've got boats everywhere pulling people out of the water. How they've got bodies floating around and tangled up in the trees and putrefying in the houses where they were trapped when the water rushed up. They've got the TV going all the time. They're showing pictures of the buildings burning right in the middle of the water. Can't nobody get close enough to help, and the buildings just keep on burning. I'm watching that news and I'm thinking, that can't be real. That can't be my home. That's got to be a movie. And then I see I'm sitting on a cot in a shelter in Mississippi. One day they show a dog swimming through the water. He's black and his tail is sticking out straight behind him. I jump off my cot and run over to take a look. He's making a V-shaped ripple through the water and he's barely able to keep his head up. The rescuers are standing in a boat and wearing yellow vests with orange belts. They're saying, "Come on, boy, you can do it." And they're reaching out to him and grabbing him and dragging him up into that boat. That dog shakes water all over the place. The rescuers hold up their hands to protect their faces, and you can see they're smiling. And I've got my face right up next to that TV. But when the rescuers step back and the dog stands still, I can see he ain't got no caterpillar eyebrow. His throat ain't white underneath. He's got all four of his legs. I lay back down on my cot. What am I doing thinking that dog might be Buddy? Even if he got out, even if he struggled through the window, even if he heard me calling and calling him in my sleep, how's he going to swim with only 3 legs? What's a dog like Buddy going to do in a world filled up with water? One shelter lady gives me a Game Boy. I sit on my cot and play it every day. I don't do nothing else. I don't talk. I don't eat except when I have to. Mama keeps saying, "Are you okay, son?" And I don't answer. Baby Terrell starts walking in that shelter and Mama has to chase after him. Tanya makes friends with 2 girls with cots near hers. They fix each other's hair. Tanya looks pretty stupid afterward, but she's happy. A lady 2 cots over starts having a baby. They whisk her off while her fiancé is in the bathroom and he don't have any idea where they took her. He sits there crying till somebody comes and leads him away by the hand. One old man stands up on the far end of the room and starts trying to take off all his clothes. His wife is screaming at him and she's saying he's itching all over. Grandpa T sits up and watches that show a while. When the lady finally makes a man stop, Grandpa T lays back down and closes his eyes. I go to the next level. We've been in that shelter almost a week when Daddy comes up to Grandpa T and says, "Wake up, I got something to tell you." Grandpa T opens his eyes. "I ain't asleep," he says. "They told me it ain't all flooded," Daddy says. "They told me around our street there are places where the water ain't so deep. Some places." Grandpa T raises up on his elbows. "One man here told me he's driving down tomorrow morning just to look," Daddy says. "He wants to see how much water he got in his house." Grandpa T shakes his head. "Too much," he says. Daddy don't listen to him. "He can't stay, of course. There ain't nowhere to stay." Daddy crosses his arms over his chest and looks at Mama sitting on the cot behind me. "He asked me to ride with him," Daddy says, "and I'm going." Grandpa T sits up. I put down the Game Boy. "I want to know if you want to come," Daddy says to Grandpa T. "There's room." Grandpa T shakes his head. "You go first," he says. "I ain't ready." Then he lays back down and closes his eyes. I open my mouth and out come the first words I've said in almost a week. "Can I come?" I say it real quick and then I shut up. Daddy looks hard at me. Mama stands up behind me. "It ain't going to be easy," Daddy says. "We won't get back here until late." "I can do it," I say, and push the Game Boy off to one side. Daddy looks up at Mama. I know she's shaking her head. I know her mouth's making the shape of no. Daddy looks down at me again. "You're old enough," he says. You can come. We get in the man's truck just before light. I'm sitting between him and Daddy. They're drinking coffee. We're riding with the windows open. The cool of the morning is coming in with the smell of all the pine trees. We're going along looking at the white, broke trunks pointing up to the sky. Behind us, the sun starts to come up. We have to go around the lake to get into town. The storm washed the bridge to pieces. The concrete slabs of that superhighway bridge just floated off like toy boats. Daddy says they got real boats stacked up in the marshes like dead fish. He says they've got boats sitting on top of bridges down by Empire. They says they've got barges sitting on top of houses in the lower Ninth Ward. That's a lot of water, I'm thinking. That's enough water to fill up a city. That's enough water to fill up a house. We're taking the back roads. The man tells us they got the army blocking the main ways. They got piles of dirt and gravel dumped across the road so nobody can get through. They got soldiers standing there with guns, and they won't let you pass. He tells us they got people tearing up the city. They're breaking down the windows and stealing everything they can lay their hands on. He says the mayor don't want nobody coming into town. They're afraid people from the country are going to come and join up with the thugs. They're afraid it's going to get out of hand. Daddy says, it's already out of hand. That's so, says the man. That's truly so. When we get into the city, the man stands close to the river where the land is higher and there ain't no flooding. But everywhere we look, trees are broke or falling down. It's just like Mississippi, except these are oak trees. On some of them, the root balls are sticking up almost as high as a house. The trees pulled up sidewalks and fences and even houses when they fell over. All the yards are full up with broke limbs and trash. They got pieces of fence and strips of tin roof laying on the street. They got patio chairs sitting in the branches of the trees that are still standing up. They got a mattress twisted up and some wires hanging off a pole. We're driving over electricity lines and phone lines draping all over the streets. We're crunching branches and trash. Everywhere you turn, there are big old potholes that could swallow your car. Daddy says to the man driving, watch out, and the man swerves that truck one way and then another. And this ain't even where the water is. This ain't even the part we've been seeing on TV. It takes us almost an hour just to get to our neighborhood. The man lets us down near our church. That church is standing there all high and dry. It ain't flooded at all and the grass needs cutting. The front door is wide open. Daddy walks up the steps. Inside it's cooler. He shouts out, hello! A man stands up behind the altar. It's Brother James. Praise God, Brother James says. It's you. He and Daddy are standing there hugging like they're real brothers. Then Brother James turns and hugs me. He's sweaty like he ain't bathed in days. Your family? He says to Daddy. Safe, Daddy says. We went to my cousin's place in Mississippi. After the storm, she went on up to her daughter's place in Atlanta. Now we're in a shelter. Praise God, Brother James says again. Daddy sort of waves his hand around at the chairs standing in the church. Everybody, he says. Miss Washington passed, Brother James says. She drowned in her attic. Daddy covers his eyes with his hand. Brother Thomas is in the hospital in Houston. His heart went bad on him, and those Carey boys have been pulling people out. They got their fishing boat, and they've been going back and forth. He stops for a minute and looks out the window. But they've left now. They're worn out. Daddy finishes rubbing his eyes and nods. We're going to the house, he says. You can't get there, Brother James says. Daddy looks at him. Your street's flooded up to the eaves. 12 feet of water at least. I'm sorry, T. Jr. You're going to have to tell your daddy about his house. Y'all ain't got nothing left. It's all gone. Everything. But what about Buddy? I say. Buddy? Brother James says. We left him locked in the bathroom. The car was too little for him to fit. He's been waiting and waiting. Brother James looks at Daddy. You were planning on getting that dog? Daddy nods. You can't get there, son, Brother James says. Your house is standing in the middle of a lake. But I can swim. I know how. You can't swim in that black water. You don't even know what's in there. And what's your family going to do if you drown yourself going after that dog? Buddy was a street dog when you found him. Now he's got to take care of his own self again. But he's only got 3 legs now. Brother James stoops down and looks me in the eye. You can't get to that dog, little T. It's the Lord's will, he says, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. And that's the end of chapter 20. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Until next time, have a good day. Bye.